right, so I think we can get started. We people can like hop on as they want to. But yeah, so thank you so much to the people who are here for joining, and thank you so much, Senator Salim, for being here.
Of
Um,
course.
yeah, so for the people who don't know who Senator Salim is, he is a Bengali American and first generation immigrant and was elected to the Virginia Senate in 2023 and represents Senate District 37. He is also the youngest senator in the Virginia Senate as well. And yeah, Senator Salim, if you can just introduce more about yourself and talk more about your background, we'd greatly appreciate it.
Mm. Uh, Thank you, Jack, and thank you everyone for the invite. I'm super excited to have this conversation. As introduced, I'm State Senator Saddam Salim. I do represent Virginia Senate District 37, which includes roughly four delegate districts in it. What that means is that given it's a 4-year term, I represent two and a half times the delegate districts. I came to America with my family when I was 10 years old and really did not realize, what the political space is or what it looked like. To come in the year 2000, we sort of came sort of right before 9/11 and right around when there was economic downturn, given the dot-com bubble. And as we moved from places to places, from becoming homeless to then moving into Virginia. We realized, the part of things that one of the main reason we came here was for education purposes. And as my dad tried to put ourselves in different places to say you're going to get a great education, a lot of us with Asian American backgrounds, especially South Asians and Bangladeshis, you're really left with two choices: become an engineer or a doctor. So I think that was really the thing throughout my lifetime. And as I got to high school, as I got to college, I realized those weren't the things that I was interested in. So I sort of steered away and gone into public policy. And, still while I was in public policy, I didn't think I was going to ever run for office. I was just going to do is be behind the scene, help folks out, grow a coalition, but ended up finding myself running for office because there was a need from the community. And redistricting played a key role in my election, where the last senator that was representing this retired because he got redistricted out of his own district. But the new senator, who represented about 47% of the new district, I'm sorry, 43% of the new district, while the 57% of that new district was brand new to him. That was the opportunity. When I looked at the data, I really saw the number of Asian Americans in that district who were never represented. They have never actually voted, and that was really the key: is how do we get people to turn out that has never voted? Because in a primary, it's always the same voters will show up. So you're going for the same, 45 plus year old voters who normally come out on a Democratic primary. So again, that was the goal, and the intention was to, how do I get to the AAPI community? How do I showcase that I am one of them that's trying to help them out, from mom and pop shops to restaurants that are owned by Asian Americans? I think that played a key role in how successful our campaign was, given we weren't targeting the same usual folks that come out and vote. Since I got elected, I sit on courts of justice, rehab and social services, agriculture and natural resources, privilege and elections. A lot of those committees deal with gun violence prevention, deal with fundings for mental health issues, along with clean water, clean air, and of course, privilege and elections is the one where the governor's appointments go through that committee along with any changes to our election laws. So I'm fortunate enough to sit in those committees that sort of put a different perspective on what it really means for somebody that goes out and votes. We had a lot of bills that came through that determines what the criteria is for somebody to even vote, along with the 25 to 50 feet radius where people can't hand out sample ballots near an election site. So it really puts it in different perspectives, along with language access. So I've been very fortunate enough to be in this seat, and I take it with pride.
Yeah, sorry, I was just on mute. Thank you so much, Senator Salim. It's such an amazing story you have, and thank you so much for sharing some of it. And it kind of leads into our next question, which is how has your background of being Bengali American influenced your decision to enter politics, and how has your background shaped your legislative priorities while in office?
Yep, that's a good question. I grew up the first 10 years of my life in Bangladesh, where, we had natural disasters after natural disasters. And the town I come from, they've always had the idea of hope. My dad was one of the first few people to actually get his full high school education done and then go off to college and then come to America. So it's that town really celebrates the success of everyone that's in that town. And I think that's just the Bangladeshi American culture that a lot of us, if you're born here, you don't see. But we were raised in a way where I think I do want to go back and talk about the cultural part about all this. I think when I came here as a 10-year-old boy, my sister was 8, my brother was 12, we sort of, forgot our identities. What I mean by that, we were so focused on how do we fit into the American culture? How do we fit in with kids in our schools? How do we fit in to the after school activities while still trying to understand does our culture fit in? So I think that was the struggle I really had. But as I got older, I realized that's who I was. When it comes to cultural food, arts, getting to know other people, the way we treat other people, that's really the key important part. No matter how many times somebody, says something about us or puts us down, the next time they come around and they're like, hey, I'm really hungry. I want some food. There's not a moment where we say no. So I think that Bangladeshi culture was sort of lost when I was in high school. And I even talked to my siblings about this as I was exploring my opportunities to run. And I think that is what has to happen when you come as a young person to a new place that you have to get along with. But at the same time, this was the hardest part about running was that I really had to embrace the cultural side. I really had to understand what it really meant to be Bangladeshi American and how putting myself in a space like this was going to influence what I was going to do. Fast forward, right before I ran, I fully understood the cultural aspect and understood the right way to embrace it. It wasn't, a lot of people will talk about how there's a lot of jokes that people will make about your clothes, about your heritage, and all that. You have to sort of embrace all of that to in a way that makes sense for you, because other people are not going to understand your culture. They're not going to understand what it means to be somebody else. So I think getting fully acclimated and really embracing that helped me sort of overcome that fear. What happens if I run for office and the cultural part impacts how I have to fit in? But as I moved in and won my election, and as I looked at legislation, it wasn't just legislation about, not only gun violence prevention, not only funding schools, funding curriculums. It was so much more. It was that I saw a different community, from South Asians to Bangladeshi Americans, who came to me, specifically the Uber and Lyft drivers, where a majority of them come from Asian American backgrounds. They never had a voice. So I knew what it meant when they had that job where they could be Uber or Lyft drivers. I knew what it meant for their families. I knew what it took out of them where they went out and became drivers the whole day, but they missed out on their kids' after school activities, birthdays, and all that. Because my parents went through the same thing where they had to sacrifice being with your kids versus going to work, because at the end of the day, if they don't work, then there's no food on the table. So that's how I shape some of my legislation, is by looking at from that point of view of what is this going to do to the next generation of that person's kids. And as a result of that, I carried an Uber Lyft bill to allow the compensation that they get from each ride to have a minimum. The bill did get turned into a study that we'll come back and explore next year. But that's what it means is that they have been trying to get this bill in front of someone for over a couple of years, but could never do it because they never had representation from that community to move that forward. So it really goes out to the part where I really had to understand who I was and then carry that forward into the political world. And the short line of this is just I was no longer embarrassed about who I was culturally.
Yeah, thank you so much. I heard about that bill actually, and I really think that bill is really gonna have great positive effects on Virginians and especially people up in Nova. For those who don't know, that's Northern Virginia. Um, yeah, so our next question is kind of just given your background, what unique perspectives do you bring into the Virginia Senate, and how do these perspectives help you when advocating for bills that you're sponsoring or co-sponsoring?
Yeah. No, so I had a number of bills last year and this year from accessory dwelling units, which is a housing bill which would have allowed somebody to build not a garage but an additional dwelling unit outside of their house within their property that would have allowed somebody to come live there. If you're a student that went out to college and came back home, but you wanted your privacy, you could have your own little home in the backyard. If grandma or grandparents want to come live with you, they had their own space. The one of the perspective of that bill was that I come from a culture where families, whether it's big or small, they all try to live in the same space, the same house, or in a neighborhood where your parents or grandparents are down the block or two houses over. So I think bringing in that perspective to talk about the bill itself, a lot of different people within my district, within different communities, understood what that bill really meant, not only to me but to other people. But at the same time, the when we became homeless, we scrambled. We lived in people's basements. We lived in odd rooms. That was a result of not enough housing. Imagine if somebody came to America and there was no housing they could afford to live in, but they could live in someone's guest house or an accessory dwelling unit that was independent of the main house. That would have given them the opportunity to say, look, I can pay a small amount in rent, but also afford to live along with find a job, along with get myself used to the American life. So that's one perspective that I think I bring is the first experiences, my past experiences, including the ones from the 1998 flood in Bangladesh, where I think all we saw was just water for months until the rain stopped, until um, it got cleared out. But those experiences have, taught me a lot about the environment, about what it really means to help folks. When we talk about the environment, we don't just talk about, hey, we're going to fix one issue, leave the other to somebody else. I think there's a larger conversation about the environment. Not only was it Bangladesh, but it's throughout the world where natural disasters will happen. And what's going to end up happening is people want to relocate to other nations, Europe, South America, and North America. That's where they want to relocate. That leads to the housing market, not enough houses. So I think there's the making those connections on why certain things happen, why people move. That perspective brings a lot to the Virginia Senate, along with the fact that a lot of my colleagues are just lawyers that want to make laws. So when you have somebody that comes from a different background that doesn't necessarily have a legal background, they get to see a lot of their bills, a lot of their issues from a different perspective than they do. Sometimes they get very technical, and I really mean it. They get very technical to the point where they're not even sure what the bill was all about to begin with. It takes myself and a couple other folks to bring them back to the reality of what that bill is, what it looks like for different communities. I carried a 364 misdemeanor bill, and I carried that bill that has to do with immigration. On the state side, we never do immigration issues. However, we can put in place certain things that will either help immigrant issues. And the bill, misdemeanor 364, what that did was our cases right now, if you are in court, you committed a theft or anything, you can get fined up to 1 year of jail time. If you do commit a crime and you don't get the jail time, but it's notated in your file that it's a misdemeanor in one class, you automatically trigger something in ICE that allows them to question you and deport you in the future. So to avoid some of those triggers for people that are waiting to get their green cards or that are in between statuses, I introduced a bill that would reduce the misdemeanor um, uh, jail time by 1 day to prevent the automatic trigger to occur. And I don't think my colleagues would have understand what that meant because I would always hear so and so got deported from the community or somebody got in trouble. This is not good for their cases. Those are the things that my colleagues don't understand. And those are perspectives that I bring to help the General Assembly.
Yeah, thank you so much. Again, like all these perspectives, and I've seen a couple of those bills on the Virginia LIS, and I definitely think, especially the immigration bill you just was the just for talking about, it's really going to help immigrants, and especially given my mom is an immigrant, so I can personally connect to that as well. Um, but yeah. Um, this kind of also leads into my next question, which is how do you see your current role as being a state senator, inspiring and empowering others from Bengali American backgrounds, or just South Asian backgrounds in general to engage in politics and advocacy work?
Yeah, no, that is one of the questions I get asked a lot more than I thought I would. And what I really say is that I don't see myself as somebody who's done great things. I think I started and I could do those things. But to be somebody who's young, to be somebody who is from a background that was never supposed to be in the political side or the advocacy side, I try to tell a lot of folks, get involved. And what I mean by that is I wish I had gotten involved when I was in high school. But I got involved, after the first Trump era, really when Obama got elected the first time, when I was out of high school in 2008. That's when I got involved, but then I didn't really stick around. Thought, hey, our country's doing great. I don't need to advocate. And then Trump happened, and I was like, oh, snap. I really got to start getting involved. And it's really, a couple hours here and there to get involved. But the other aspect is, I try to tell a lot of folks, connect it to something that you care about. If you really care about public education, there's a lot of organizations, a lot of activist groups that will empower you to advocate on their behalf and to sort of bring that issue up to everyone's attention. One of the other things is um, for me, it was always I didn't know somebody else in my family that got involved or anything that could tell me how the process is. I never knew about the process. So that's where I tell a lot of folks, use me as an example of, reach out to our office, whether it's recommendation letters or just a phone call or just a conversation here and there. Those are the things that I could be helpful with. And the other thing is if anybody is having issues connecting with their congressperson or whoever, give our office a call and we'll be able to connect those folks. I think having that line of communication from my office and myself and leaving that open should be an inspiration because what that does is it says, look, I never had the access to anyone. I never knew how to connect with someone. This person is giving me the opportunity to say, use me as a way to connect to your congressman, to your folks, to advocacy groups. So I think that's the aspect that I can provide in terms of how I can empower other people. The other part is it's scary to get involved. It's scary to be in the public's eye. It's scary to even be on social media. But again, you have to understand anytime I go on anything, anytime I talk about anything, anything that comes out of my mouth, I always assume I want the whole public to know. Once you embrace that idea, you're going to feel a lot more comfortable. You're going to realize you're no longer afraid of your cultural background. You're no longer afraid of, public engagements and public speaking. So I think a lot of that sort of plays into the Bangladeshi American and the Asian American cultural background. I was at a AAPI a congressional advocacy a conference where they're trying to talked to about 25 people that wanted to run for office in the future. And the biggest challenge that they had was they were afraid, coming from a different culture, how would they incorporate that into the political life? And I, gave my speech and I talked about how there is no playbook in the political world. It's however way you want to make it out to be. If you want to participate 10%, you participate 10%. You want to go all in 100%, run for office, find out what the best opportunity is. That's all up to you on how you want to do that. The other thing is, if there's an organization, whether it's AAPI or anything else, that is going out to the state house or Congress to do advocacy day, volunteer, sign up, take that one day. You're going to learn so much more from that engagement than you thought you knew. And that's how I started when I got involved. Um, for the first time, I went to the General Assembly in 2022. The second time I went was in 2023. The third time I went was 2024 as a state senator. So that's what I mean is that I never would have imagined within those 2 years that my thinking process would have changed from those 2 years. Along with what really did it was that once I got there and I talked to my representatives, once I talked to other folks, you create this courage that, hey, if these guys could do it, it's so fast paced. I could also do this. But at the same time, you get the opportunity to understand what LIS is, legislative information system. You get to understand how bills are made, how they're carried, and it's not the 2 minute clip we see on YouTube on how a bill gets made. It is a lot more complex than that. So I think until you see that in action, you're not going to feel the empowerment that's within you. And for the AAPI community, my office has been the one of the many offices who have hired from our communities to get them more involved to say, look, you could be an aide, you could be a chief of staff, you could be an intern. And that has gone into other offices who have started doing the same thing because it's more about making sure that diverse backgrounds are included in that process so that they can go back home, talk to their siblings, talk to their friends, and talk about how great it is.
Yeah, I 100% agree. It's also, um, I was definitely also kind of scared when entering advocacy work to begin with because I
Yeah,
wasn't sure how the public would react to my opinions on certain things. However, I feel like again with the advice you already given me, that really helped me personally to kind of get out of that bubble and not be afraid anymore of speaking my truth.
yeah,
Um, and especially truth related to AANHPI individuals, which is something I personally connect to.
yeah.
Um, yeah, one of our next questions is as I mentioned before, Senator Salim is the youngest member of the Virginia Senate. So, what strategies do you believe are most effective in engaging young constituents in the legislative process? And I know you kind of mentioned this already in your previous answer too.
Yeah. No, um, I didn't realize I was the youngest until I think we get training before session starts for about 2 days. And the second day, we wanted, I was talking to the clerk's office and I said, what is the age of all the senators? What is the new average? Because prior to me getting elected, in our 2024 class, there was 21 new, or I'm sorry, 17, I want to say, ish, new senators between both parties. And within the 21 Democratic majority, 11 of us were brand new. So, and we were all under the age of 40. And I was like, you know what, that's fine. I just want to see what the average age is. So it went from, I think, in the upper 60s all the way down to 54 as the new average. And that's when I discovered, wait a minute, I'm the youngest in here. And the age gap between myself and somebody else is about 6 to 10 years. So what some of the things that I have learned is that when I talk to Senate Finance Chair Louise Lucas or when I talk to the Majority Leader, they're either my parents' age or they're my grandparents' age. So it took me a while to go from, Senator such and such or Mr. such and such or Mrs. such and such to call them by their first name because it's like they're my parents' age. And my parents were at my swearing in a ceremony where I think they felt they were younger than some of the senators I sit with as well. But it has really made it where I think, I treat all of my colleagues as equal, but at the same time, when, Senate Finance Chair is closer to my grandma's age or even older, I wanted her to see me as somebody who was smart, somebody who was, like her own grandkids. So I have those conversations with her, with other folks as well, where I think the strategy is really getting to know them to let them know that, hey, even though I'm one of the youngest senator who's coming in here, I'm not trying to take over the Senate. I'm not trying to effectively change everything, but I would like to work with you on how I can implement those things. So it's sort of talking to them, really getting to know some of the policies that they want to carry, and really agreeing to share and co-sponsoring some of their bills. I ran on assault weapons ban. Senator Deeds, who I've never actually met until I got to the Senate, um, I co-sponsored, Chief co-sponsored his bill on the assault weapons ban. We had conversations around that, what that bill really meant for me, what that bill really meant for him. Turns out it was two different meanings of what it meant for me and what it meant for him. Some of the other gun violence prevention bills, he comes from Charlottesville, Virginia area. I'm from Northern Virginia. So I think having those different dialogues, really sitting down, and they'll look at you like, hey, you're too young for this. What are you doing here? But once you prove to them you're here to support some of the legislation that they're working on, they're going to end up supporting some of the ones that you're working on. So that's really the strategy that I found most effective was find something that they really care about, connect with them, support those issues. And then when you bring your issues up, you're going to realize, even without asking, they're fully on board to support those things.
Yeah, great, great. Thank you so much. Yeah, I understand definitely being younger. People may look at you and people have looked at me before. It's like, what are you doing here? Um, you're not as educated as us adults out here. Um, and a lot of times I feel like sometimes I even prove them wrong sometimes
Yeah,
because I show them that, hey, I am educated. I know what I'm talking about and I'm not, and yeah, and I know what I'm talking about. I know what I'm advocating for and why I am.
yeah.
Um, yeah, Ty, did you have a question actually?
Yeah, I was just wondering, Senator Salim, I know that you're like a major leader in like, of course, Virginia, but also among Bengali Americans as well. So I guess going forward, and I guess for like Democrats as a whole, what do you think it'll take to like mobilize more South Asians or like of your ethnicity to like come out to vote in the future?
No, that is a good question. I was actually with a Bangladeshi, U.S. Bangladeshi Advocacy Council last night. They actually asked me a similar question. Um, it is really going to take a lot to, when it comes to mobilizing, is we really have to get to know our people and what the real issues are. And I really mean this when I say it is because when I ran, I ran on the top three issues that the party cared about, top two national issues. But after you pass those issues, the next six, seven issues that I cared about a lot was small businesses, teachers' pay, making sure that there was enough housing for grandparents and for students. The forgotten communities that we don't talk about are the challenges, are the reasons why it's challenging to mobilize in our community, especially with the Bangladeshi Americans. I went to them, try to get them out, and try to really help them understand what it means for me to even run, but let alone for them to get involved. And their thing has been, hey, we're super busy. We can't come to your event at 5 p.m. when we have to work until 10. So the way I mobilized was that I changed all that by having some of my meetings at 10 p.m. at night, going to the local mosque later at night, along with earlier in the morning, so that I can catch people when they're available, not when I'm available. So I think doing some of that, and I started doing the other thing is showcasing some of our local Asian American businesses that would have never had that ad space had I not ran. So I think it's how do we mobilize, we have to connect back to our roots and back to the communities. Um, be on their schedule, not on our schedule. If somebody's working and they got a restaurant that's open at 9 a.m. that closes at 10 p.m., I can't expect them to come to my event or do something for me and mobilize around them. Have your canvas launch at their restaurants or at their coffee shop to get them more involved, to get the owners involved. That is what it's going to take. When it comes to specific issues, I think one of the challenges is that our community, and I really mean this overall, the AAPI community, South Asians, Bangladeshi Americans, the number one thing that they care about a lot is survival. How do we survive in America, and how do we do better so that our kids are better off? Those are the two things they care about. They don't care about, the abortion issues. They don't care about getting rid of stock purchases for congressional folks. They don't care about any of those major things. And I openly say this because I know what the challenges that are facing our community because I talk to them. Other folks will say, we did a survey of 1,000 people and it came out, these are the top three issues, but we left out the API community as a whole. That's where the problem is. So I think including us doesn't mean we have to fit their schedule. Including us means that you come to us, you incorporate us into it. Is it's challenging, but it's doable. And I have had Zoom calls. I've had things where it was later at night after 10 p.m. and people really appreciated that. And those folks became my number one supporters, had my signs at their stores, right outside their houses, right on the window of their restaurants. And people came to me in my party and said, how did you get them to even come, volunteer for you or get that sign there? I said, well, I went to them at 10:30 when the restaurant was closed, not when, at 3 p.m. when it's busy, and I want to bug them about it. So that's what I really mean is that it mobilizing doesn't mean the 10 a.m. canvases, the 12 p.m. Zoom calls, the regular involvement. We have to do it the other way around and really listen to what the needs for the people are. I was able to tap into the voters that never voted in a primary because they didn't have enough of a DNC score um, in Vote Builder to even get a knock. So when I went to them, they said, "Oh, we support Democrats, but we just don't vote in primaries because we don't think that's where it matters." Getting those folks out was the reason why I had that big margin. So that's what I mean is going to our community, even when they can, and with the way Virginia is set up, where you can vote by mail uh, for the last couple of years, that has made it extremely easy for our community vote. With some of them having businesses and firms that are open 7 days a week. My parents would have never voted had it not been for early voting at 6 a.m. or had it not been for vote by mail right now. So I think it's the challenges are going to continue to be there, but what's going to end up happening is that we have to go and talk to our folks. We have to really understand why those challenges occur. And we, as the political side and candidates, have to change to accommodate communities, not the other way around.
Yeah, thank you so much, Senator Salim. And I think our chair, Ankita, is going to ask the next question now.
Okay.
Hi, it's an honor to have you on today. Virginia is definitely one of the nicer states to be in. I've been there a couple times. It's really been a great time. Yes, so my question for you is what challenges and obstacles have you encountered as a legislator due to your young age, and how have you overcome those obstacles? Obviously, I think you did address this with your
Yeah.
recent question, the question about your age specifically, and
Yeah.
how you were one of the younger senators. But I guess maybe like specific obstacles or instances in which you remember being directly linked to your age, perhaps?
No, definitely. I think the heritage part and the age part will play a key role as one of the only second Muslim American in the Virginia General Assembly, specifically in the Senate side. It is difficult in terms of how do we bring that heritage and that religious affiliation part into the Senate, because there are a lot of things where and I'm going to bring this issue in. I hope I wouldn't have to, but when you look at the Arab American world, the Palestine and Gaza issue, I always try to tell people every single person has a voice in that because everyone's very passionate about their where they put their support at. But people will come up to me when it comes to supporting LGBTQ rights, when it comes to supporting abortion rights, when it comes to supporting um, international issues. They'll come up to me and really say, as a Muslim, how can you support this? Religiously, you can't do this. And I go, that has nothing to do with me fighting for someone's individual right. It's like, why should I sit here and tell women what and what not to do with their reproductive rights? Uh, and I kid you not, somebody sent us an email and then they came to see me and the specific thing that came out of their mouth was like, as a Muslim American, how could you support abortion rights? And I go, my religion has nothing to do with that issue. All it has to do with is making sure that every woman, uh, they have the same right to choose on their own. And if there's any issues, they can talk to their doctors about it without us getting involved. And the look on their face was like, oh, snap, he's not really budging. So I think that's where the heritage and the uh, background comes in. Same thing with other issues, and as being a young person, I think a lot of people will think, oh, we can just go over to his office, talk about certain things. Because he doesn't know any better, it's going to be where we can convince him to be on our side. And I do the thing where I will listen to everyone from both sides, specifically gun violence prevention. I have had conversation with somebody who was pro Second Amendment rights, has, thousands of guns in his own home, has threatened me a few times. And I had the conversation with him, just let him talk, and all I did was listen. And I think at the end of that conversation, it came out where he really realized that I wasn't trying to take away his guns. I was trying to make it safer for other people to coexist with the guns he has in public places, in schools, and areas where there's a lot of folks. So I think a lot of people will think, oh, young people don't know what they're doing, but I go in there with the idea that, I don't know everything that's out there. But at the same time, I can do is listen and really take those in as feedbacks and come back with a stronger comments or a stronger stance on issues. So those are really the two examples where they're very challenging because even right now, when I'm a state senator, people will look at me like, "Oh, you're not a." I was at an event where I was supposed to show up, and I do, and I don't have staff with me, and I'm presenting a resolution for them and they're looking at me. I assume they didn't look up to see what I looked like. And somebody came up and says, "Are you from the office of Senator Saddam Salim?" And I go, "No, I am Senator Saddam Salim." So I think the perception is that they thought I would be in my 40s or 50s because in the political world, there aren't enough young people. I think it's less than 1% of folks that are under the age of 35. So I think as a result of that, they assumed I was with his office and not the actual senator. So I think that's the challenges. Those are the challenges that I think we're all going to face. But it's going to take a lot of us. Like it's going to, AOC to myself to all the other folks that are out there um, that have actually made these sort of steps to get into the political space. AOC took somebody down that was there for so long that they were never checked. They never had any accountability. I did a similar path, took down somebody that was there for 16 years that never really had the accountability part. We're going to have all these obstacles. Um, we have to fight 10 times harder just to get the same seat. And one of my advice, and I know I'll end with that for this question, is that just because you get a seat at the table does not mean you're going to get served. And you really have to think about that. You earned the right to have a seat, doesn't mean they have to serve you. And I have sat in meetings and committees and other organizations where they gave me the seat because I earned the title of a senator through an election, but they never served. They never gave me information. They never said, here's what you need to do. Here's what we want from you. Until you insert yourself and say, look, by the way, I never got my food. Until you speak up, until you voice that concern, they don't give you enough credibility.
Yeah. A lot of the times I make the opportunities that I find, and I don't really get those things just straight up handed to me, which is obviously
Yeah,
it's a sort of thing on earning based off merit and not of other things, but it's also just like, why can't you just be
yeah,
welcoming to everyone, you know?
exactly.
It's really interesting too, because you mentioned the religion thing, and I went to the Georgia Capitol recently, and I'm from Georgia, by the way, and they were saying like a couple prayers before every committee session, and that was really interesting for me because I was like, huh, there's like I think like two or three Muslim legislatures in the actual session. There's several like agnostic, and like there's
Yeah,
and et cetera, et cetera, and it's just like I know one legislator who's like possibly like Buddhist or something like that. And it's like it's very interesting to see that,
yeah,
especially considering that like you're supposed to be the land for everyone and not just for a specific demographic.
yeah. I will say this session we have had um, rabbis, clergies, imams, folks from the Hindu community, and different variations of Hindus as well that came and gave the invocation to begin the floor session. So this may have been, and I have to go back and check, may have been the 1 year where we have had every representation. We in Virginia we have Muslims, Hindus, the first Sikh ever in 2025 to be ever elected, and I really mean that. That is such a proud moment, not only as a South Asian Muslim, but also to see, folks from different regions be represented. Buddhist, and I have to go look to see how many religious affiliated legislators are there, to really, provide a full detailed report on it, because I think it is unique. Virginia has really, for a purple state, it has really set the standard and really pushed that forward. Yet no one wants to talk about it because it's going to make it awkward.
That's about right. But
Yeah.
thank you for sharing. I appreciate it. I'll pass it back off to Jack for the next question.
Yeah, so this is the final question I have, which is, as you know, the Virginia's gubernatorial elections are coming up in 2025, and this will be one of the most watched political campaign races in America in 2025, and I personally believe it might set the tone for the midterms in 2026. So what advice do you have for high schoolers in this call, youth out there, and more specifically Bengali American youth who want to get more involved in campaigning and maybe possibly have a career in politics?
Yeah. I would really say to a lot of them, with the gubernatorial race right now, on the Democratic side, we know who our nominee is. On the Republican side, they're still trying to figure that out, and they'll figure it out in June. I would say really just get involved. If you're in high school, you're in college, or you're just in your community, start a group to get people to register to vote. That is the only thing that matters right now is unless people vote, the second thing is they got to show up and actually vote. So I think getting your aunts and uncles, your parents, to say, look, this is an important election. We think you should get involved. You don't have to make a contribution. You just have to register to vote, and really talk about what it really means to not only participate in an election, but also to elect the right person. This election isn't just about we're going to get a new governor. It's also about how Virginia has had this thing where they have always um, had opposite governors compared to who's in DC, in the White House. So I think it will set the tone to say, look, we're going to counter the Youngkin administration and their policies, which aligns more with Trump than our communities. How do we counter that? By electing somebody who will actually listen to us, who will come talk to us. So I think it's having those conversations, really going out there, and placing those things with different communities. That's how you're going to be able to get involved. And my advice is really, whether you're in high school or middle school or just in college, um, go to your local Democratic or Independent or Republican committee, and really sit down and see what they're talking about. Um, my first one that I was in the back seat with two other people, Justin Fairfax and Omar Fateh, and myself. And Justin Fairfax ended up becoming Lieutenant Governor of Virginia not too long ago. And my friend Omar Fateh, who I went to the meetings with, ended up becoming a state senator in um, uh, Minneapolis, Minnesota. He is now running for the mayor of Minneapolis. So that goes a long way. Had I not gone to that meeting, I never would have gotten exposed to the idea that I could actually sit there and listen to what they need us for. And a lot of times you'll be the only person that looks like you in that room, and you're going to feel uncomfortable. And my advice is you are going to feel uncomfortable. It is going to be okay. They're not going to do anything to hurt you. Um, but until you really, take into the idea that you can do this, that's really my advice is like believe in yourself, whether you're in middle school, high school, wherever, and just reach out. The worst thing somebody could say if you reach out to their campaign is no, you can't get involved, or no, we can't have you come to this thing. I have a lot of people who reach out to me and say, look, can I come to your event? I will comp them and say, yes, please come to my event. I have used a lot of high school students, gave them internships to come work for my campaign. Took Krispy Kreme donuts to their meetings and all that because I knew that they wanted to get involved. And it ended up where it wasn't just 5 or 6 people, it was 10 to 12 to 20 people that came, and volunteered and really helped me out. So it's really one person reaches out and you're going to realize that the candidates or the individuals are going to reach out to you. So it's really um, get involved as much as you want. And if you feel overburdened and you don't want to get involved, take some time off and then come back later. That's what I did. I got involved, took some time off, came back to it after I finished college and all that, and I'm still here. So that's my advice is get involved as early as you can.
Yeah, thank you so much, Senator Salim. I know personally I'm going to get very involved in the Abigail Spanberger campaign, because my opinion, we need a Democratic governor back in the
Yeah.
governor's office. So yeah, that's all of our questions. So now we're just going to open up the floor to anybody else who has any questions. I know Tunrope who has their hand up, so if you want to go.
Hi, my name's Tanroop. I'm from Washington State. I just want to say that I really appreciate all the things you mentioned, especially about reproductive rights. I try and advocate for reproductive rights here locally in Western Washington, and it meant a lot what you said. And also as someone from South Asian heritage. So you mentioned fears about, or like hesitancy, about how your own heritage would impact your campaign or election earlier. I hope to work in public service when I'm older, and if things go a certain way, maybe even run for office. I want to ask like how you came at these feelings and how you kind of dealt with them or coped with them or how you used it to your advantage in your campaign.
Yep. So I have two examples that I can give you specifically. One for the reproductive rights. So I went to our community, I went to other South Asian communities, and just really there was one topic where they all felt embarrassed because they didn't know how to talk about this. And I'm just being honest, we don't talk about this in our homes. We don't talk about it at all. But years ago, my mom had to get a hysterectomy because she gave birth in a third world country. There was no aftercare. So I had to go and say, this is what reproductive care means for our community, and really talked about, hey, you all gave birth in a third world country, you experienced all these symptoms, you got help. And I just really want to, have that open conversation, to the point where my mom got involved in it as well, and try to talk to the other aunties and say, when my son's fighting for reproductive rights, it's really to make sure these are the things you can get help from. So now you can go to the hospital and they'll be able to know exactly what you're diagnosed with and how it impacts you. It's having those conversations without really saying reproductive rights is about abortions or not abortions. That is a very small percentage of what reproductive rights is. Everything else. And then following that up with, at the end of the day, it is your choice. It shouldn't be a political choice. It's between you and your doctor on how you want to deal with that. So that's one example I can give you is that you'll have to really find, somebody, not necessarily somebody in the community, but really explain to them what that means to you personally. I explained it to the point where it really meant is that if my mom never got those services, she probably would have died by now. If she never got that surgery, she probably would not have survived. So it's making a personal connection and connecting to that same community. The second one is the LGBTQ plus issue in our community. We don't talk about it. I was at every masjid up till June. And I'm thinking, things are going great. I'm doing great. And then June happens and We make an update on our social media with the pride flag. We support the community. Mind you, I have had LGBTQ plus policies, how I want to fight for them on my website, talked about it everywhere since January. Come June, suddenly I get all these messages saying I need to take this down. This does not reflect the Muslim community. You're no longer welcome to some of these things. How did so there was two ways I could take this. I could say, you know what, man, this sucks. I could really use their support and win this as well. What ended up happening is that I went back to every masjid every Friday. I kept going back. I kept talking about how this is not just about, you know, somebody else. This is also about the fact that it's their individual right to be who they want and when they want to be. It's not my business to tell somebody what they can and can't be. And then I lead into the idea that as Muslim Americans, we have faced a lot of hardships. We have seen ourselves go through the Muslim ban. And on the other side of that tape, the people that stood with us was the LGBTQ plus community, was people that we never thought would have stood with us. And you're telling me you can't stand with them. So it's really, don't make it about you as a candidate. It's make it about them as a whole. It's make it about the other people that are involved. Your role is really to facilitate conversation between one group and the other. That's really how I took that approach. And I kept coming back every Friday until my primary happened. One guy came up to me and said, you really keep coming back every Friday, even when we kept saying, we don't like these issues. We don't like what you're doing on your social media. And I said, at the end of the day, if it was you who needed immigration help, who needed any other help, you think I wouldn't fight for you this hard, just like I'm fighting for the LGBTQ plus community. That was the moment where he realized, oh my gosh, this guy he's not going to cave. Because here's the thing, other politicians have gone, they have seen that they're not welcome because of these issues, and they stopped going. And I think that is a big mistake. The moment you stop going is the moment you realize, they realize that you aren't as strong as they thought you would be. And you yourself realize you give up quicker than you thought. So I think those two examples are the two main reasons I kept going back until they close the door and lock it and say, you can't come in. I'm going to keep going. And I still do. And the number of folks that have come to me and said, and it's really, I have an issue, the issues that I care about, it's a giant pie. Just because one gets the attention now doesn't make the other ones irrelevant. So it's always, I have always talked about it, it's a human rights issue. It's an individual issue, just like us when we're trying to go through the airport or when we're trying to get involved in any community. Make it make sure that they understand you're not attacking them personally. You're trying to help different communities. At that time, that was the community that was vulnerable. At a different time, your community was vulnerable too. And I would still fight for every community with that same energy as I did for the other communities. Fast forward a year and 2 years later, they have already forgotten about this issue. And it happens every June, unfortunately. You're not going to be able to win everyone, but the goal is to never give up. The moment you do is the moment you technically lost, because you realized you just couldn't bear the burden of keep going. So that's really how I handle those two things.
Yeah. Thank you, Senator. Yeah, I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much. I know our Vice Chair Junia. I think she is able to, and she typed something in the chat, but
Oh,
Junia, if you're able to ask out
yep.
loud, you just certainly can.
Yeah, of course. So, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate you being here and speaking to us. So, my question is, what are some of the legislative priorities your office has right now and the actions that y'all are taking to move forward on them?
Yeah. So our session actually ended at the end of June. I'm sorry, February of this year. So our sessions are on an even year. It's 60 days, and on an odd year like 2025, it's 45 days. So this year, the issues that I had was affordable housing, AI technology, and some of the other ones I had was gun violence prevention and making sure that when it comes to public educational funding, we actually do fund those. I had my accessory dwelling unit bill from last year. It made it out of the House, I'm sorry, the Senate. It died in the House, unfortunately. With a lot of the AI bills, autonomous, including autonomous vehicles, including artificial intelligence itself, I wanted to go ahead and set the stage for it so that we put a lot of labeling when something is produced through AI, whether it's uh, an image or a text or just voice. So not only just in front of it, but also behind every coding, you can actually put a label that says this was AI generated. That bill ended up going to a study that we're going to see what happens next year. So some of those bills that were really my priorities. I cared about it because a lot of businesses, a lot of kids um, who have gone through cyberbullying, people are using the fake AI images to insinuate some of that. Same thing with business reviews, same thing with conversations that people never had. Along with, a lot of the older folks in my district have experienced phone calls where they're calling you and saying, "Hey, we need you to give us 2 Bitcoins of some sort." So those have been my priorities. And out of the 20 bills I carried, 11 of them have gone to the governor's desk. Some of them include mail theft, which includes Amazon packages to make sure that there's penalties on the books for anyone that's committing those crimes. Not the fact that they're stealing your boxes. It's the fact that they're taking your information and selling it to a dark market. That is where the bill is gonna try to help with. Some of the other one is the ombudsmans for foster care children. Sometimes they get into a foster home, and if they want to, call and make a complaint, there is no hotline for that. There is no privacy for them. So the bill that I carried and the governor signed a couple days ago will allow somebody in the foster care system to get the right help that they need without feeling that the families are watching me or I can't make the proper complaints. But yeah, so those are some of the priorities I've had. Going into next session, we're going to continue to work on housing, immigration, and I'm going to try to make a third attempt to bring my medical bill that's related to cancer patients. A lot of times when you're a cancer patient, fertility preservation is not something that's covered. And a lot of people will get through their cancer treatments and realize they can't have any children in the future unless they pay $20,000 to $30,000 prior to that to have fertility preservation in place. So our bill would do is single-handedly change the insurance companies and the whole system to allow them to get these to be included prior to the diagnosis as well.
Thank you so much.
Of course.
Yeah, I think Zayed now has a question.
I do. Long time no talk, Senator.
Yeah.
So, sort of when we're looking at politics and we're looking to advocate for our communities, there's not many representatives that are of us, Muslims, AAPIs. And so when we do have representatives and when we do have advocates, we have to expect more of them. So, when us, when we're out there and we're advocating, as youth, as Asian Americans, what are some things that we can do to better advocate for our communities?
Yep. I would say is that find an issue that's in your community, especially with our community, that's a problem that doesn't have a solution. When I got involved in the advocacy side, a lot of the gas station owners had an issue with the petroleum folks. They sit on the same board as the renters for their gas stations. So it's like rent goes up, the prices go down, and vice versa. Same people control it. So they came to the groups wanted to advocate for that. Never really had any young folks to come out. So I joined in on that fight and went to Richmond and advocated on their behalf to really explain to some of my uh, political folks, some of my representatives, what that really means for this community. So I think it's really finding an issue that your community cares about. And a lot of times there may not be one. So the role is going to be is that, if you're in an area where your representative does not look like you or you don't know if they're ever involved, is invite them to an event in your area. Invite them to something that happens in your community. And a lot of times they'll say no, but you keep inviting. Eventually they're going to say, yes, we can make it. And that really is how I did it with some of my other colleagues. I kept trying to invite them to events. And that's how if they come to it, you now can get folks in front of them and say, look, congresswoman, congressman, or a state senator or delegate came to this. I want you to come, see them talk. That's how you're going to create that relationship. And it's not going to happen overnight. It'll take some time. I'll stay on for another question. I do have to drive to another thing in a few minutes.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah, I think Ankita has
Yeah.
one final question.
Yeah, it was a genuine pleasure having you on. Before you do have to leave, we'd like to take like a quick little Zoom photo. We usually do that for our newsletter and social media. But yes, my last question was, what exactly is your plan in between now and next session? And
Uh,
how do you continue on planning to advocate for communities that you
yeah,
care about?
of course. No, thank you for that question. So between now and session, I do sit on a lot of commissions and committees, including the fact that we at the state level, actually, state senators and delegates, we get to pick our judges. So we have about 4 openings right now, and people will apply. And I have a meeting this upcoming Thursday. 21 of us from the Fairfax County delegation will sit down and interview about 10 people to fill, I think, 4 positions at the moment. Last year, for the first time, we were able to put an Arab American Muslim judge in the Commonwealth's history. And then prior to that, we were able to put the first Black man on General District Court since 1998. Last week, or about a month ago, we were able to put an Indian American, actually promote an Indian American judge from general court to a higher court. So those are the things that I get to advocate by talking to different communities. So between now and next session, I really do a lot of forums like this, a lot of conversation with communities, a lot of conversation with different people that have never had these conversations. That's where I get a lot of my bill ideas. I had one that was invasive species bill where if somebody has plants on their yards, it grows out to somebody else's. It's not a native plant, but I want to educate people when they go to Home Depot or a store that says this is an invasive plant for your local area, by which then sort of makes you think, should I buy something else? Or some other plant. So educational aspects, I get to learn a lot. I don't know everything. I was actually at a power plant facility last week, learning about the process, learning about what is the time if the power goes out, how fast it comes out. So once I get to know all this stuff, I can make better legislation going forward. So that's what I do between now and session on top of my daytime job as well.
Yeah,
Amazing. Thank you so much. Oh,
yeah,
sorry, Jack.
oh no, it's totally fine, Ankita. But yeah, thank you so much, Senator Salim. We, on behalf of the entire AANHPI caucus and HSDA, we really appreciate you coming out and talking to us and the members of the AANHPI caucus. And thank you to the members who joined today's event. But yeah, thank you guys so much for coming out. I think we need to just get a picture, right, Ankita?
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you want me to take that or do you want to take that?
You
So
can take it. I
while you
think
do that,
you.
I do want to say thank you so much for getting me involved and actually having me here. If I could be of any help, I think Zayed knows. If you need anything, reach out to me. You all have my email address. I regularly check that as well. So use me as a resource. And I really mean that. Don't think of me as another elected who we can't get a hold of, but as a resource to set yourself up for success, set yourself up for the next stage in life, because that's going to go a long way.
Yeah, thank you
Oh,
so much, Senator Salim. Yeah, Ankita, are you able to take the picture?
yes. Okay. Sorry. I think my okay, I'll just do this really quick before my phone dies.
Gotcha.
One, two, three. One, two, three. Okay, I will be in contact with you like right after this to talk like once you're done, obviously like
Yeah,
tomorrow probably because you're driving right after this, but after to talk about like opportunities for the youth here and stuff like that. It would be really awesome to have you.
definitely. Thank you again. Y'all have a good evening.
Yeah, thank you so much,
Sorry.
Senator Salim, and
Have a good
everybody
night.
who joined.
All right,
Right,
too.
thank you. Bye.
He's gone.
All right, bye, Zayed.
Bye-bye. Ayan kita.
Oh, okay. Love that. My phone fucking died.
Your phone died yet you're here? Question mark.
No, the issue is it like kept tweaking out on me. So like I can't tell what it is. I couldn't hear anyone saying goodbye.
Everyone
I had to
just
take my
left.
life.
It's just me and you.
Wait, okay. That's fine.
That went
Fuck. What else should
well.
I forget?
People
Did
did
it?
people did show up. It's just that they didn't stay for the full thing.
Yeah, that's fine. It's better if people didn't show up then.
Yeah. Then got like 11 people. At least y'all had other people ask questions. When I hosted Salim, nobody had additional questions.
Oh, that
Uh,
sucks.
yeah, it's really funny.
How are you?
I'm good,
We
I
should
guess.
record after this
Oh
actually.
yeah, fair point.